So Hollywood has a huge problem, and it's all of their escalators are totally broken. No, that's not what their problem is. And it's not that they have all this digital technology that's slowly eroding the tradition of filmmaking. And it's not that they have only comic book movies that that's the only thing that they're willing to put out nowadays. And it's not that ticket sales keep declining every year. No, it's none of these problems. It's something that we're all dealing with every day in our society. And it is a massive gender disparity problem. Females are consistently unsupported by the Hollywood system, and more importantly, by the film-going public in general. In an article in IndieWire, they attest that in the last 5 years, of all the films released by Hollywood, only 4.7% were directed by females. So that means in an average year of about 200 films that come out, less than 10 of them were directed by females. Men outpace women 4-to-1 in all film industry-related jobs, and female characters are only the protagonists of their stories less than 23% of the time. So who cares? Why is this even important? Well, the film industry is arguably the most successful art form of all time, especially if you consider scope, impact, and dollar signs. The wide-reaching arm of the film industry impacts consumers on a global scale, and as often as movies reflect society, they inspire it. But more importantly, I look at the movies that we all consume every weekend in the movie theater, and I see things on the screen that are offensive to me. I see treatment of women that we would never stand for in real life in society. So let's start and identify what exactly are we talking about here. Let's start with characters. Characters are the lifeblood of stories. They're intrinsically dependent on each other. Without one, you cannot have the other. For instance, tonight, we're all characters in the story of this evening. Now, granted, in the story of your life, I'm only a minor supporting character, especially if you consider the plot of your entire life. And to be fair, you're all just merely supporting characters in the story of my life as well. Now, I think that's pretty offensive for me to actually admit to you. It's pretty rude, and you actually have every right to get up and walk out right now. But if you did, it wouldn't matter because my story would keep going on. So what do we do in order to avoid allowing our characters to become knowledgeable of just how inferior they are? Well, we as filmmakers, we give them attention. We might write a handful of really great scenes for them to be in. We might give them a few really great lines to say. We might give them a backstory or maybe a character biography. But when it really comes down to it, the best and most efficient way for us to infuse characters with humanity is to give them choice. Choice is the lifeblood of characters. Think of it like this. If you're driving down the freeway and you can see up ahead of you there's a car accident, you have a choice to respond to this accident. You could stop and see if you could help maybe save somebody's life. You could speed up because you're late for work and you don't have time to deal with this inconvenience. Some people might slow down to a crawl in hopes that they might see some real-life special effects on the side of the road. And other people might keep their eyes looking forward, maintain the speed limit, hands on 10 and 2, because they know if there's an accident, there's probably police. And if there's police, there's probably trouble. But in any of these decisions, you reveal a great deal about yourself, a great deal about your humanity. And female characters are consistently refused the opportunity to ever make an impactful decision in the plot. They're merely just there to serve the male characters, to drive them into and through their story, and they become ultimately decoration or just objects. Now, we all know that there are a handful of iconic female stereotypical roles. A couple of them include the damsel in distress who depends on a male character to come and save her. The femme fatale from the film noir tradition who initially appears to be a love interest to the male character, but eventually becomes the antagonist. The object of desire, which is just this item that the male protagonist wants to eventually have ownership of. The absentee mother, who isn't necessarily explicitly connected to a male character, but her story does depend on some other character. And the badass chick. The badass chick is every bit as tough as her male counterparts. Now, these characters can potentially be dynamic, I suppose, but ultimately they're just flat. They're just there to serve the male's plot. And they're rarely offered the opportunity to ever make any sort of meaningful choice. So let's identify a character who breaks the mold. The Hunger Games. It's a dystopian, Orwellian type, post-apocalyptic society where the poor people get to elect two of their young people to go to the city center and fight each other to the death as a sort of gladiator-style piece of entertainment for all the richies. Our main character, her name is Katniss something or other, I don't know what her last name is, and she is given the opportunity to be in this film and make very impactful decisions. First off, let's identify what her characteristics are. She is the badass chick. She's very adept at using a bow and arrow. She, in fact, kills a handful of characters over the course of the film. She's both physically and emotionally strong, but these characteristics do not define her. More importantly, she makes a choice early on in the film that will end up defining her. Her little sister gets nominated to go to the games, and she volunteers to take her place instead. This is most likely a suicidal choice that she has made, but it's crucial that she makes it. And in doing so, she reveals a well of emotional strength that she will draw upon for the rest of the story and for the rest of the film. And then if that one does well, the next film. And then if that one does well, they'll split the last book into like 2 movies, and then she'll be doing it then again. But the most important thing is she was given the choice in the first place, and she revealed a great deal about herself by volunteering. Because she could have said, sorry, sis, that's really unfortunate. I'm glad it wasn't me. I'm going to get back to doing this other thing that I was doing. Good luck with the games. But she didn't. She stepped up and she made it happen. And this is very crucial and very important in the film business. So why did it even happen in the first place? Well, I think she exists for 2 reasons. First off, she comes from a literary tradition. She was born in a book. And in books, we don't have to make $50 million in the first weekend, so we can take a lot more healthy risks with our characters and our themes. And second of all, a female wrote the book. So logic would make sense that she'd be more adept at creating a compelling female character. Now, I think it's great that this movie exists because it proves to the studio executives that an action film that stars a female can make a ton of money. And so hopefully that trend can continue, but we'll see. Now, keeping in mind that Katniss comes from a female creator, there has to be male filmmakers out there who are capable of creating compelling female characters. But how do we find them? In 1985, comic book artist Alison Bechdel releases a comic strip that eventually becomes what's known as the Bechdel test. And it's sort of a litmus for trying to identify female content in a movie. And in order to pass, your film must contain the following. 1, at least 2 female characters who have names. That's it. 2, the 2 female characters must meet at some point and have a conversation with each other. And 3, that conversation has to be about anything other than one of the male characters in the movie. Those are the only requirements. It should be easy. So let's try it out. Let's take one of the most successful film trilogies of all time, The Lord of the Rings. Do we have at least 2 named female characters? Yes, we do. We have a human and like 2 elves. They all have really dorky, nerdy names, so I'm not going to say them. Do these characters actually meet and have a conversation? No, they don't. At no point in like 12 million hours of Lord of the Rings movies do any 2 female characters ever hold a conversation with each other. We're not asking that one of them's in the fellowship itself. We're just asking that they actually look at each other at some point. Okay, so Lord of the Rings fails. Let's try another successful movie trilogy. How about Star Wars? And I'm talking about the real Star Wars trilogy. Do we have 3 named characters? Yes, Princess Leia, Emperor, Mon Mothma. Do they have a conversation with each other? No, they don't. Now, some people like to try to say that there's that point when Mon Mothma was describing how are we going to destroy the Death Star, and Princess Leia happens to be in the crowd who's listening to her, but that doesn't really count as a conversation, does it? So Star Wars fails. How about Avatar? Fails. The female characters never have a conversation with each other. In fact, of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time, only 2 of them clearly pass, and that's Titanic and Frozen just barely got in there. So before that, we only had 1. Granted, the Harry Potter film and one of the Transformers does get by on a technicality, but it's a gray area, and that's telling in itself. So what's the lesson from the Bechdel test? It's not, how do I find a good feminist film? It's that the test is so absurd and ridiculous, the fact that it even exists is telling. Because if we were to just shift the genders from female characters to male, nearly every single movie that has ever been produced passes. And that is the lesson in it. Okay, so if we can't use the Bechdel test to find good, strong, compelling characters, why don't we just Google it? Because that's the obvious way to conduct any sort of academic research. So if we Google strong female characters, we invariably end up with a list, and somewhere near the top of that list, we end up with Sarah Connor. Sarah Connor is the heroine of the Terminator films. If you haven't seen him, she's the mother of a boy who will eventually become the leader of a resistance against these robots who are self-aware and they want to stamp out all humanity, and so they send another robot back in time to kill her before she even has a baby. So even from the get-go of the story, her entire existence and her plot depends on a male character that doesn't even exist yet. Okay? But to be fair, in the second Terminator film, Judgment Day, she has toned her physique into a hard body. She's equally adept at stabbing you, punching you, kicking you, hitting you, shooting you, killing you. She'll swear in your face like a sailor, and she'll stick you in the neck with a hypodermic needle that's full of Clorox bleach. She is the single most violent character in the entire movie. Now, she is incredibly dynamic, and I will give you that, but ultimately, she's just a male action hero dressed up as a woman. Her proclivity for violence and her ultimate relationship to the plot undermine nearly all of her femaleness. And but because she's so strong and so badass that the male filmmakers feel good about themselves because they created a tough, strong female character. And those of us in the audience, we're fooled into believing them because we've all been trained to somehow think that masculine strength is equal to character strength. I don't know about you, but I refuse to be defined by my strength as a male. And I don't think any of us should. So why does Sarah Connor keep showing up at the top of all these lists of great female characters? Who do you think is writing the lists? It's usually males. Right? So what are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing we need to do, we need more females in the film industry. An influence of females would have a huge impact on the vastness of the themes that are coming out and the quality. I'm not saying that more females automatically mean that the movies will be better, but unless you're a member of a majority group and you insist on being blind to the diversity that surrounds you, we pretty much all accept that a variety of experiences only serves to influence and enhance our own experience. So while most of us are incapable of directly affecting how many women are in the film industry, certain higher institutions like this one are capable of creating strategic initiatives that can recruit, retain, and assist female students in pursuing their goals. But in addition to that, in the American education system, we have an initiative that's called the STEM Initiative. And STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. And there's a huge push to encourage young female students to pursue disciplines in these areas. And I think this is a really incredible program. But I think it has room for something more. Why not just add one more letter to STEM? Why not put an A in there for the arts, and STEM becomes STEAM? Now, this isn't my idea, and it's not novel, but it doesn't get enough attention. There's definitely room for the arts in our curriculum. Now, in addition to that, what else can we all do? Well, we don't get a vote for the Academy Awards each year, but we do get a vote for the best movie every week. We vote with our wallets. And the movies that consistently earn the most box office votes are the ones that insist on your ignorance as you consume these movies, as you watch depictions of women on screen that are vapid, flat, and offensive, as the camera and the characters continually insist upon objectifying, sexualizing, and destroying our idea of what a powerful woman actually is. So like any good character, we all have a choice. Are we going to keep supporting a system that refuses to allow women to the table to even influence it? Or we can continue to reinforce ideas that women characters are only there in order to serve their male counterparts? Or are we going to start peeling away the things that we consume, and are we going to refuse to keep feeding the mediocrity machine? Thank you.